Welcome to today's Explainer. Look, if you've been feeling completely scattered, exhausted, or just literally unable to focus on a single task lately, you are exactly where you need to be. Today, our mission is to decode this very real, very frustrating phenomenon of digital addiction. We're going to break down the actual science of why our brains are basically betraying us right now, and much more importantly, how we can take back control. To do this, we're leveraging some incredibly eye-opening insights from Thibaut Muriez's powerful book, Dopamine Detox. So let's jump right in.
I want to start off by painting a picture that I am pretty sure we can all relate to. Picture this. You just pulled into the parking lot of your gym. You park the car, and the front door of the gym is what, maybe a 2 or 3 minute walk away? It's nothing. But what actually happens in those 2 minutes? If you're anything like most of us, your hand instinctively reaches right into your pocket, pulls out your smartphone, and you start mindlessly scrolling through shorts or reels. I mean, we can't even survive a 2-minute walk without digital stimulation anymore. And it doesn't stop there, right? Even between workout sets, when you're supposed to be catching your breath and focusing on your body, boom, the phone comes right back out. Why is it that any tiny pocket of silence in our day just has to be instantly filled with a screen?
Okay, let's dive into this, because this constant, endless need to scroll isn't just some quirky modern habit. It's an actual trap, and it's actively causing 4 major disruptions in our lives. First off, our attention spans are absolutely plummeting. We just do not have the patience for deep work anymore. Honestly, even sitting through a full TV episode feels like a chore, because we just get bored so fast. Second, our real-world connections are weakening. Whether that's the mind-body connection during a workout or actual relationships with friends and family, we are just constantly somewhere else mentally. Third, poor sleep quality. You know what it is. You can't sleep, so you scroll, which wastes hours and totally ruins your next morning. And fourth, we're seeing this rising addiction to instant gratification across the board, especially with junk food. We literally get angry if our food delivery is 5 minutes late. So what does this all mean? Well, all these symptoms point straight to one underlying culprit.
That invisible force running the show? Dopamine. It's the famous feel-good hormone that drives our brain's entire reward system. Basically, whenever you do something your brain thinks is beneficial for survival, like eating, hanging out with people, or learning something new, it releases a hit of dopamine to say, hey, that was awesome, let's definitely do that again. But in our modern world, this ancient survival-based biological system has been totally hijacked. Dopamine is the single root cause behind all those daily struggles we just talked about. And to really understand how we lost control of our own internal reward system, we actually need to rewind the clock a bit.
Let's go all the way back to 1889. A psychologist named Edward Thorndike started putting cats inside these wooden puzzle boxes. At first, the cats just thrashed around randomly, until they accidentally hit a lever that popped the door open to a piece of fish. That hit of dopamine from the fish taught the cats to repeat that exact same action. Fast forward to the mid-20th century, and B.F. Skinner took this concept even further. He used rats in cages to study exactly how rewards shape our behavior. And today? Well, today, that exact same behavioral conditioning has evolved from wooden boxes and metal cages directly into those glowing smartphone screens we hold in our hands. Now, what's really interesting about this is how B.F. Skinner's rat experiments perfectly map onto our lives right now. He basically ran 3 tests. The first was positive reinforcement. A hungry rat presses a lever, it gets food. Simple, right? The second was negative reinforcement. A rat gets a mild shock, presses the lever, and the shock stops. We take action to avoid pain. Makes sense. But the third experiment, this is the one that changed everything. Skinner made the rewards variable. So the rat pressed the lever, but the food only came out randomly. Sometimes they got a little, sometimes a lot, sometimes absolutely nothing. This unpredictable, variable reward system drove the rats completely crazy. They weren't just pressing the lever when they were hungry anymore, they became wildly addicted to the actual act of pressing the lever itself. This brilliantly illustrates our current reality. Think about it. The rat frantically pressing a physical lever, desperately hoping for a random pallet of food, is exactly like a modern human swiping a finger up a glass screen, desperately hoping for a funny video or an entertaining photo. The variable reward system is literally the exact same thing. When you scroll, you have absolutely no idea what you're going to get. Sometimes it's a super boring post, but then sometimes it's this incredible video that gives you a massive dopamine rush. That specific unpredictability is the absolute core of the addiction. Which brings us to a pretty sobering reality check. Social media companies systematically built their platforms to make us act exactly like rats pressing a lever. Seriously, if you've been feeling guilty about your screen time, you need to realize that this is not entirely a personal failure on your part. These apps are highly engineered psychological environments. They are systematically designed by thousands of brilliant engineers to exploit that exact variable, dopamine reward system, that B.F. Skinner discovered.
They want you pulling that digital lever as many times as humanly possible.
So how in the world do we fight back against a system that engineered? How do we reset our brains? Well, according to the insights in Thibaut Maurice's book, the ultimate solution is the 21-day dopamine detox. Think of it kind of like going to rehab, but for your digital overstimulation. See, right now, your baseline for dopamine is through the roof. You need massive amounts of constant stimulation just to feel somewhat normal. But by taking 21 days to intentionally disconnect, you actually allow those overstimulated dopamine receptors to naturally drop back down to a healthy, normal baseline.
Now, the rules for this detox are strict, but they're absolutely crucial. First, you have to establish a hard no list to cut off the cheap dopamine. We're talking social media, Netflix, video games, gossiping, alcohol, cigarettes, and yes, even junk food and coffee. I know, it sounds totally extreme, but here's the trick. You substitute those intense urges with healthy, grounding activities. You drink water, you go for walks outside, you stretch, meditate, maybe write in a journal. Removing all these high-tech pacifiers essentially forces your brain to recalibrate and finally find peace in the simpler, slower things.
Okay, I hear you. A 21-day total blackout might sound way too extreme for you right now. And you know what? That is totally okay. There is a very practical, very doable alternative here. Just cut out one thing. Just one. Pick your absolute worst habit. Maybe for you, it's scrolling Instagram for hours in bed. Or maybe it's binge-watching Netflix late into the night. Pick that single greatest source of cheap dopamine in your life and challenge yourself to completely cut it out for a set number of days. Even just this one focused action will make a massive, massive difference in getting your dopamine levels back under control. To really wrap our heads around why this detox works so well, we need to look at this fascinating metaphor from the book. It perfectly explains the frustrating disconnect between what we want to do and what we actually end up doing. Imagine a rider sitting on top of a donkey. The rider represents your mind, your logical, forward-thinking brain that wants to work hard, hit the gym, and achieve big goals. The donkey, on the other hand, represents your body, your physiological self, which, let's be honest, is naturally lazy and just wants instant comfort. And the carrot? That is a healthy reward that the rider uses to motivate the donkey to actually move forward. Now, historically, the rider simply dangled a carrot, the donkey got hungry, and it walked forward. Simple. But modern life has completely hijacked this dynamic. We are no longer just choosing between working hard or doing nothing, we are constantly being bombarded by chocolates. Modern life hands us these chocolates on steroids, the super cheap, ultra-accessible dopamine from reels, junk food, and endless phone notifications. Things like deep work, exercising, or reading a great book, those are the carrots. They offer amazing, healthy, slow-release dopamine, but they actually take effort to get.
Which brings us to a very logical, very important question. Think about it. Will a donkey that is already completely full walk a mile for a carrot? If your body is already stuffed to the absolute brim with highly addictive, sugary dopamine from 3 hours of scrolling social media and watching Netflix, is it really going to be motivated to do hard labor for a plain, crunchy carrot? Absolutely not. The donkey's full. And this is exactly why your body utterly refuses to sit down and do a productive hour of deep work. It simply doesn't need to, because it already has all the cheap dopamine it could ever possibly want.
So what is the core takeaway of this entire framework? It's pretty blunt. Starve the donkey. You must intentionally cut off the daily supply of cheap chocolate dopamine. Because it's only when your physiological system actually becomes hungry again, when those baseline dopamine levels finally drop, that the plain, healthy carrot of deep work, exercise, and meaningful relationships will start to look appetizing to you again. You literally have to clear out the junk so the good stuff actually feels rewarding.
So the crucial point is, and I want to be completely honest with you here, doing this is going to hurt a bit. When you take away that constant, endless stimulation, you aren't just going to magically wake up feeling perfectly productive. You're going to face withdrawal. We're talking feelings of loneliness, depression, anxiety, and just this profound sense of emptiness. Why? Because we use our phones as a shield. We use that cheap dopamine to constantly distract ourselves from normal, negative human emotions. When the distractions stop, all those suppressed feelings are going to rush right up to the surface. And yeah, it can be a really scary experience.
But that brings us to a truly beautiful piece of advice from the book. Face your demons instead of escaping them. There's this great anecdote in there about Jennifer Aniston. Yes, from the sitcom Friends. Apparently, she started journaling way back at age 13. And years later, during some incredibly emotional and painful times in her life, like going through a highly public divorce, she didn't turn to cheap dopamine escapes like alcohol or endless distractions. She leaned right into journaling. She faced her emotional pain head-on by writing it down. When you do a detox, you absolutely need a healthy outlet like journaling to process those negative emotions rather than just running away from them.
At the end of the day, information without action is useless. So I am leaving you with this one provocative challenge right now. Which source of cheap dopamine are you going to cut out today? Don't wait for Monday. Don't wait for the first of the month. Look at your life right this second. Identify the chocolate you've been feeding your donkey and cut it out. Take back your focus, reset your brain, and start chasing the carrots again. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this explainer, and I seriously cannot wait to see you conquer this challenge.